So I'm going to start off with a question. How has your work come to be connected with climate change or with the changing land and waters? Somebody want to jump in first? We don't have to go in an orderly fashion.
Okay, I'll start real quick. I'm a teacher, and so when I do my classes for community, staff, students, I do it on a social studies plan. Like first there's geography, and then history, and then economics and government. And I apply that to our Navajo history. The recent one, since 1868, when we signed a treaty, that's reflected in the dolls. Before we signed the treaty, we dressed like the women who are wearing the chief blankets and the dresses that are woven. And so after that, we had everything taken away, and so we had to dress what I call rags. What I'm wearing right now is just rags. And that's a reflection of what we saw the Spanish women wearing, or the teachers in the schools, the white women in the schools wearing. The men, they didn't really vary from what they were wearing before, except they started wearing pants that they stole off some soldier. But anyway, that the climate has affected my work by just recently, because of the we've had a lot of rain and snow in Shiprock, which is really weird. I mean, we don't always have a whole lot of snow and rain. And so that's prevented my workers from finishing up my office. I wrote this proposal to the First Peoples Fund to help me finish my office and workplace, so I don't have to work on my kitchen table or on the bed in the bedroom, and just here and there. So I'm building that, and so that's how the climate has affected my work. But it also will go into my teaching about how there's cause and effect, what we do, how we drive our big old trucks, our gas guzzlers and our 4x4s and our diesels, how it affects the whole world. Just each one of us, we can't say, well, it's those guys that live over there, they're the ones, We have to take responsibility ourselves, and that's how I would start talking to the students. Excuse me. I also have a whole spiel on water, but I'll just let somebody else give their what they want to give now. Excuse me.
Before I answer Lara's question, I'd like to share just a really, really quick story, and I promise to be quick. I want to tell a story about how I ended up at this table. So I got an email one day from Rachel, and she says, we're going to have a panel discussion on how climate change affects your art. Who would like to participate? So I'm like, man, that sounds really interesting. So I emailed back, and I said, I'd like to participate. And I thought I would go and I would listen to people. So then the agenda comes out, and my wife, she says, oh my God, Josh, what did you do? I said, I just emailed back, said I'd like to participate. So, then I thought, well, it's all right. I can get up there and share a little bit. But so that's how I ended up on the agenda. So, but as far as the question goes, in our area, we work with black ash tree. So how climate change has affected our art, around the year 2000, they say the emerald ash borer got to Michigan off of the freighters, the wooden pallets. I've talked to a lot of other basket makers. They think it was before the year 2000. So since then, or maybe before the year 2000, the emerald ash borer has been making its way all the way through lower Michigan, which, if you know what Michigan looks like, it looks like a mitten. So how climate change has been affecting us is more of like climate variations. So what that means is in the UP, one year we could have 14 feet of snow. The next year we could have 3 feet of snow. It varies from year to year. When we first started, myself and my wife, we prayed for a really, really hard winter because we wanted to help kill off that emerald ash borer. So that year we did that, Lake Superior froze over completely. So everybody in our community wasn't very happy with us, because it was 20 below, 30 below. But over the last, I want to say 4 or 5 winters, it's been very mild. So a lot of that has to do with climate change. A lot of that has to do with climate variations from year to year. But due to the fact that we've had easy winters, the emerald ash borer is speeding up its process of killing all of our trees. So unfortunately, we were lucky enough in the UP to be able to still harvest basket-making material. But it's getting harder and harder, and we're having to travel to other areas, to Wisconsin, Minnesota, and then that's basically how that has affected our art and our business in art. So. We like to go in order.
So how climate change has affected my art. I work with sealskin a lot, and growing up in Barrow, we're right on the Arctic Ocean on the coast there. And so my art, I use a lot of furs and sealskin, and so I've noticed over the past 10 years, even though I don't live there, I still go back home sometimes during the summertime, sometimes to see if anyone has a sealskin that they are not going to use, because a lot of people don't know how to process them. But so our ice has been, it seems like it's been shrinking, and it's been leaving faster, because like the first or second week of July, our ice finally leaves the ocean, but we don't want it to leave right away because the seals lay on there, and then it's harder for us to go and hunt the seals because they're so far away, and gas is so expensive. It's at least $7 or $8 a gallon up there. And so sometimes my relatives will go hunting, and they're out boating all day trying to harvest a seal, and maybe just come back with one. Even they'll stay out there for like 24 hours sometimes and just come back with 1 or 2. And so I've definitely seen climate change, and it affects my business, because if I don't have seals, and seals have been really hard to get the past like 5 years, and so I buy from people in Southeast Alaska, and but I really like to have northern seals from my area, but I mean, just any sealskin now. The issue is it's so hard right now to get sealskin, and it's so expensive that there are some artists that I know found a way to import them from Greenland, in which we have issues, all the restrictions with Canada. We're not allowed to import sealskin. It's illegal. We can't ship sealskin over to get tanned because it's illegal. And so now supposedly there's a permit where Greenland can ship sealskins in, but they're still not the same, the ones that we want. So yeah, I've also, my family is also a whaling family, so we still traditionally harvest bowhead whales, and we use their baleen for jewelry, and sometimes I incorporate the baleen into my clothing. And maybe 5 years ago during the springtime, so this time of the year right now, we have spring whaling, and our whalers break trail on the ice, and they make a trail to the open water. But about maybe 5 years ago, the ice was so thin that there was only a couple whaling crews went out. We have about 23 whaling crews, and we feed our community with the whale. And this crew went out there even though the conditions were dangerous and the ice was so thin that they did successfully harpoon a whale, brought it on the ice. But as soon as they started bringing it on the ice, we have a rope pulley system to pull it up, and the ice was starting to just break, and they were only able to harvest like half the whale. And then they ended up taking what they could and evacuated back to the land. And it was really hard that year because we had only had one whale to feed our whole community. And usually we have, in the springtime, I think we harvest at least 15 bowhead whales to feed our community, and we trade with other communities in Alaska. So, we don't go commercial fishing, or we don't even have salmon, and so we trade salmon strips down with people in Fairbanks, and they want muck duck, and so it's like a trading system too. But the climate change has definitely affected art for me and other people in my hometown as well.
Well, I'm kind of like with my brother over here. I didn't expect that I'd be kind of in front of everybody and feeling nervous like this. I travel across the nation. I get on stages and things like that. I even did a TED Talk. But anytime I get in front of people, my heart just falls down here, and my voice kind of goes back there. And it gets scary, freaky, social anxieties. But I empower myself because the work that we do is so important, that we put our life on the line, and we have to put ourselves, in places that makes us uncomfortable. So when we talk about climate change, I was a director for our community center. I serviced our people in our cultural education, prevention programs, a lot of different things throughout my professional career. But 2016, things changed for me. I went to a place called Standing Rock, and I stood with many of your relatives from your communities and your tribes. And being there for 7 months at the front lines, we endured a lot of things, with the Ochete Sakoan people. And it really awoke, something in my spirit, in my heart. And it's ever since then, my life has totally changed. And creating the education and awareness to the climate and to the protection of our Tamhula, our Mother Earth, and to our future generations, our Chechmala, are the beautiful ones, the children, the future generations. So when I go into these schools, one of the things I look on their walls is when they talk about American history, it always begins with Christopher Columbus onwards. And I'm thinking, they're missing tens of thousands of years of our observation from our indigenous people. My great-great-grandmother, her name was Chamissimus Morning Dove, Christine Quintasket. She was the first Native American female author in history, and she preserved our Chaptik, our creation stories. And my family are storytellers and spiritual people, so what I've taken into my heart is the stories from our people. From the very beginning of time, and many of you could think of your own tribes, where you come from, your creation stories, that gives us our responsibilities to caretake for our Mother Earth, the water, our children, and each other. It gives us all the guidelines, of how to protect, this beautiful earth that we live. And what we have as our roles and our values. And these are the education that we also have to share with our relatives of all colors and all different forms of the walks of life, education, or whatever it is. So this is what I do, is I create stories, and I've been developing theatrical stage performance and books and whatnot, music, to create that awareness and education towards the protection of our environment, our land, and honor our ancestors through their stories and the songs and our language. And these are the things that I want to, our people, especially our children, to always remember how beautiful our culture is, and as well as our responsibility to care for Mother Earth. Lemna.
Like these two gentlemen, I got the email and I must have like blazed past the word panel and just saw discussion. And I'm like, yeah, sure, I'm in. And then the agenda comes and our pictures and bios are all there. It's like, oh, wow, we're like doing a thing. And I'm new to this conversation. Like I only started really focusing on the environment thanks to Delbert Anderson and to Dat. They were, as soon as I came and joined the band a couple years ago, they were in mid-project of, a multi-interdisciplinary project where a wife and a husband, Karen Ellsbury and Patrick Hazen, he would put his landscape photography onto canvas, and his wife Karen would paint the metaphysical around it. And we were tasked as a group, the band in music, me in poetry, a dancer in movement, and the painter and the photographer to sit as a group and try to come up with some sort of story arc around each piece. And there were 8 pieces, and we created a whole show out of this. So it was really like the first time I had explored any of my writings towards the earth. But I'm a hip hop artist. I've been doing hip hop since 2001. What we are news reporters. That's all hip hop is. We are, you don't trust mass media? Well, like listen to hip hop. They'll give you the true story of the streets, what's going on in the communities. And so I started really like thinking of my relationship to Mother Earth, and where do I fit into the environment itself through this project. And then right after that, we toured 5 national monuments in partnership with South Arts, 5 different indigenous tribes, and the Bureau of Land Management to kind of tell these stories of the land, tell these stories of the water, being the voice through our artistry of the indigenous people. So trying to connect with the tribes and tell this story. So here I was, like project after project, being introduced to these like stories about the environment. And I had to really think about what is my relationship to the environment. And then I just moved home in July. And where I live is a Colville Confederated Tribe. So we have 1.4 million acres in Washington. And a lot of it is mountains. And 75% of it is surrounded by the Columbia River. At the base, at the bottom southwest corner of our reservation sits the Grand Coulee Dam, which is built back in the 1930s. We are salmon people. We come from the river, the power of that river. And in 2020, now you think about this, with our connection to the salmon being so deep, that dam being built, being so large, there are no ladders, there's no systems available to even get those salmon above the Grand Coulee Dam. So since it was built, the salmon haven't been to their ancient spawning grounds since. And here we are, as native peoples along this river, our connection to the salmon too were severed. So there's very few of our native peoples that are even going out and harvesting in those traditional ways. So when I moved home in July, I said, okay, how do I use my skills as a hip hop artist, as a storyteller, to kind of tell this story? And in 2020, we had to hand salmon by bag, by bag, by bag, hand by hand, gathering as a peoples to sing our salmon back into the river above the Grand Coulee Dam. Mm-hmm. And my connection with the environment and the importance of the changing of our water systems and the raise in our water temperatures all came full circle when I sat at the bottom of that bank and one of our council members said, hey, James, do you want to hold one of these salmon? I said, yeah, sure. And I got to hold a tail of one of these mother salmon before she shot to life and went upriver for the first time in 77 years. Like I was standing there with Barbara Ripa, one of our elders, like one of the ladies that got me singing in our language through the church when I was like in kindergarten. She was there when the dam was built and remembers when the salmon could no longer go above that river. And then here we are coming full circle 70-something years later, and she's standing above us, watching us guide these salmon back into the river. And I started to realize the importance of my role as a hip-hop artist in the environment, and especially in the storytelling of the effects of what's happening to the river and our people from a Colville tribal perspective. So I'm new to the conversation, but really over the last 2 years have been really focused on the environment of our reservation and how to like uplift the voices of our culture bearers.
I'd like to say something about water. On the Navajo Nation, our water is very, very scarce, and 30% of the tribe, the Navajo Nation, live on the Navajo Nation. 30% do not have running water. So in this room, there are 9 tables? These 3 tables here would have to go out every day or every week and get 50 or 100 gallons of water for the family use. And sometimes you run out of gas going to the wells, or if you're just using the river water, and it's really dangerous because we have the Gold King mine spill, which sent down a lot of cadmium and mercury and a whole lot of other chemicals used to take gold out of the soil in Colorado. And this is the worst drought for the last 1,200 years in the Southwest, and that's a long, long time. That's when the Chaco and all of those started being abandoned. And so the anthropologists like to say Navajos just arrived in 1100. That's a lie. We've been here throughout the ages, migrating back and forth. We're Athabascan too, so we're related to the peoples up north. When my brother did his DNA test, we're related to the Mayans and all the way down into South America. And so we're related. We're the only real Americans. I had to laugh at the 45th president when he said, "America, make America great again." Well, they're not American. They're just citizens of the United States, and that's it. We are the Americans. We can call ourselves Americans, and that's the truth. Another thing about our water, from 1947 to 1965, the United States government was the sole purchaser of uranium, and that we mined, Navajo people. They left behind 523 abandoned mines, and they only cleaned up 1. And so they also took water. I mean, uranium mining consumes 200 to 300 gallons per minute. Then they depleted the Navajo Nation's water supply. And coal mining on Peabody, the lawyer that was working for the Hopis was also working for Peabody Coal. And so he was backstabbing the Hopi people for the water. And so they divided us. It was like divide and conquer. Navajos, you go hate those Hopis because they're taking your water. Hopis, go hate those Navajos, But a lot of us are married to Hopi. And some of our clans, like Ozethachini, that comes from Hopi, from Araibi. And we're related to Tewa, too, because during the wars, we're related to them. And that's what I tell the students about. The historical value of water is huge. The Gold King mine spill, the government told each Navajo farmer that lost so many hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars for their crops, they couldn't individually sue. They could only sue in groups. So when the lawyers came out of Albuquerque and Santa Fe to Shiprock, they just only took so many people, and then they wouldn't allow anybody else to come in because they could only represent so many people, and those people were told that you will argue, your arguments will be used in court. Okay, they did, but the Navajo tribe is, like I said, kind of greedy and small-minded sometimes. The Navajo Nation Tribal Council took all that money, those millions, and they put it into a general fund for all of the Navajo Nation instead of those farmers along the San Juan all the way to Aneth. And our farm didn't get any help at all. USDA was sued because they were not helping blacks or Indians or people of color. And so recently we were told you can borrow from USDA, but I think I'm going to have my brother look at CDFI because he can get some money for tractors and that because we're always having to hire somebody, and that costs a lot of money, but we just rather have our own. I have so much more to say about water, but I'll stop.
Thank you, Barbara. I sit on a lot of panels for mainstream organizations where they're like making funding decisions and grants to artists and those kinds of things. And something that I see a lot from these organizations and generally the other people who are making the decisions are non-native, and they have a really hard time seeing the relationships between things like farming and art. They have really narrow categories and ideas about what it is to be an artist. And what I'm hearing from all of you and what I see with artists I work with is that there's all these other pieces, like there's your artwork, but it requires language, it requires knowledge of land, resources, seasonal patterns. It's about the patterns of your community and ceremony. And that's something that is, other people have a hard time understanding that. And then they'll go make categories like, oh, well, your art is about climate change. Well, your art's about so much more than climate change. And that's what I'm hearing as you're speaking. It's about land issues. It's about the legal issues around land. It's about legal issues around harvesting. And then for performers, people think about climate change and they think, oh, it has to be about materials. It's not about materials. It's about words and about the knowledge that you bring. I wanted to ask, so we all have in our tribal histories, our people's histories, like really extreme changes to our land. We have natural disasters. We've all gone through periods of change and survived them. And I wondered if you had anything that you wanted to share about how we will manage the coming changes. That's a surprise question. Sorry, it wasn't sent out. This is from listening to you speak about your work.
We're going to start there or this side?
Whoever has a thought.
All right. Hoocha. Well, I think our takeaway on this, as artists, like we have a creation story how people stole fire from the sky. And within that, everyone had to be a part, small, big. Everyone has their abilities and strengths, just like all the artists here has their mentality, their wisdom, their education, their skills, and it's collectively working together. I started a program called the Young Warriors Society, and my hope is to get back, into, if you look at all these tables and if you think of all of our tribes, how we were all together living in our own sovereignty, but when we collectively traded, helped each other, supported each other, through our food sovereignty, maintaining our cultural resiliency, our integrity, as Indigenous people, we have the answers as Indigenous nations to all these things that are happening in the climate. But it's just like our elders said, it's the colonialism, the capitalism, the world trade, and so much more that in the educational system that don't want to hear us. They don't want to hear that truth. Standing up and creating changes, that's not easy. It's not easy for any one of us to do because we look at lateral violence and all these oppressions that happen, even in our own communities that began with this boarding schools and this mentality, that we have, that we knock each other down, we look at each other, we gossip about each other, we hate on each other. How come we can't love each other and pick each other up and encourage each other, support one another? And this is what we need to do, is to find these avenues and ways of getting back to the circle and to the love and how to help each other and uplift these voices, and to encourage each other through all the skills that we have, but also to remember the integrity which is contained within our languages of our people, our ceremonies, our creation stories, and our songs, all these things that we think of as just entertainment. They're more than entertainment. They are holding us together spiritually, and that's what's getting us through this, is our culture. So to always remember that and to empower that, and that should always be something that we give strength and encouragement to. But often we always put that to the side. We have to uplift our culture.
I think it brings up a memory of one of my teachers. His name was Brother John Haskell. And my brother over here spoke about love. And my teacher, my elder, my mentor, my best friend, he passed away last year. And 2 years before that, he had retired. And when he spoke, he says, if you know anything about me, you know that it's going to be about love. And he spoke about love. And he taught me how to love myself. He says, if you do not love yourself, then how can you love anyone else? The way that I grew up, we weren't really taught love. We didn't say, I love you. It wasn't until the year 2000 when my first child was born that I started to learn about love. It wasn't until Brother John taught me how to love yourself and how you can love other people, how you can love your spouse, your children, your parents, and how we can love our Mother Earth. Because if I'm going to sit up here with a microphone and be honest, I can say that I do love myself. I do love my spouse, my children. I do love Mother Earth, but if I was going to be honest, I don't think that I do enough to help her. There's a lot of different things. We all know what we need to do as individuals. There's things that we have to do. We have to drive. But there are things that we can do if we want to be honest with ourselves. Because as my teachers taught me, our spirits have power, and our spirits have power, our art has power to bring awareness and to bring change. So climate change is a really, really touchy subject, and it got stated in our email how it becomes politicized. You become known as an activist, a water protector. But maybe if we all just do a little bit, then that change can affect, climate change to help our Mother Earth, our Namama Aki, as we say in Ojibwe country. So I think, I'm going to say to myself, maybe I'll start doing a little bit more, and maybe my spirit can affect more change. Maybe if you do a little bit, and maybe affect somebody else, and then we all come together and do it as one, as indigenous people, as an indigenous nation of this land. As my elder spoke, from here to South America, to up into Canada, to our relatives up there. So, Chimagwech to my brother for bringing up that and reminding me of that teaching that I learned from at home. Sometimes we call them the old ones, the elders, our teachers, our mentors. So that certain individual that I spoke of, he passed away almost a year ago now. So say Chimagwech to his spirit. He was an excellent speaker, and if he was here, I'm sure he would have said a little bit of what I just said and a little bit more. So, Miigwech.
Well, before I go too far, I got a lot of my facts from the March 20th Newsweek magazine because there was recent SCOTUS arguments before the Supreme Court of the United States regarding our water by the Navajo Nation lawyers, and the U.S. Attorney Liu, I think he's Chinese, he more or less opened the door. He left room for us to keep the argument going. Thank you.
Can you repeat the question?
Is there something in your work or in our artistic practice in general that helps us deal with the climate changes that are coming?
So since I work with sealskin so much, and it's such a big issue in Alaska, I think like battling that problem, I've actually talked to other artists that work with sealskin, and one lady was like, I don't even care, I'm gonna order sealskin from overseas, and if they come after me, they come after me. Because, I mean, this is all we had. Previously, we had no borders. And, you know, it's, all these rules and regulation from the government are causing all this division. Like, if we were able to just order from Canada, and they do commercial sealing, it wouldn't be an issue. And so, just probably us coming together and working together, and I mean, I feel like we're finally moving forward a little bit with the issue, since so many of us use it in our artwork in Alaska, and I'm just really thankful. Like, I think we just need to come together more as a group and stand up together, and feel like more change would be made that way.
I think if there's a way that we could educate, I call them the people who are in charge. You know, this young lady speaking about getting a permit, doing this. If there's a way that we can find a way to educate the people that are in charge of our culture and our ways, because I'm sure it's the same over at this side of the country. It is where I come from. We've all been taught that there's certain ways. At home, we offer our tobacco, our sema, when we harvest. We also only harvest what we need. We also, if we harvest more than what we need, we share it with somebody else that needs some. So I don't think that the people who are in charge realize that us as Indigenous people, we know what we're doing. We've known for thousands and thousands of years on how to do it. But when you get these regulations and different things, red tape, you know, put in front of us, you get frustrated because, you know, you're in charge, but we know what we're doing. We've always known what we're doing. And our community is a big fishing community. So, you know, we not only have fishermen families, but our tribes run some of the biggest fish hatcheries. And also our tribal fishermen only harvest what they're supposed to harvest, you know. So we all know what we're doing, right? We just need to find a way to educate the people that are in charge.
And I think art is a good avenue to educate people. It's sometimes perceived as less threatening than standing out in front of them with signs.
I can agree. I come at the subject from the lens of an artist, and if I'm going to raise any type of awareness around any type of subject, it's going to be access to space to be able to tell that story. And back home, we've got community centers in each one of our districts, but we also have the Boys and Girls Club, and we've got funerals that are happening all the time in our communities. So having access to space for us to like challenge each other on our ideas, to develop new works and stories around the social justice and environmental subjects that are important to our specific peoples is really important. So when I came back home, I started looking at our communities and going, okay, like, where are the gaps? And for me, like, the change of my artist approach has been the continuation of what's been talked about here, this ecosystem and my role in it. And my start with First Peoples Fund was as a solo artist, and I had all these needs and all these wants to help develop my career. And now that I've received access to capital, now that I've received access to networks, now that I've developed processes and systems into creating new stories, and have developed that process into something that's palpable and digestible that I can teach to other community members, has been very influential in my life. Because now that I moved back home, I get to look at it from someone who can fill gaps. So right now my initiative is a stage production about the damming of our river, And the place where I want to premiere it is at the base of the Grand Coulee Dam. And it's a cinema that's been abandoned for the last 12 years. It's where I went on my first date. It's where we watched our first movies. It's where I played Lucentio in 6th grade in The Taming of the Shrew, like all of these firsts. And it's like a gathering hub of our people. But it's on the border of our reservation. And it's owned by the city of Coulee Dam and the Bureau of Reclamation because it's connected to the dam itself. So here I am now in a much more, like mature stage of my career, to where now I can go in with the network, with the access to funding and capital to come in and say, I want to take over this space, City of Coulee Dam, here's my proposal. I want to lease this space out. Hopefully we get rent to own, probably not because it's the Bureau of Reclamation, but I want to be able to build these stories that are connected to our land, that are connected to our river at the very place that these traumas happened. Because I feel like if we're going to push the narrative forward, if we're going to push the need for humans to care about the earth, we have to bring back that connection. And as far as like our societies are concerned, like Western society, I feel like the big disconnection is that the concept of our relationship to land is land ownership and holding dominion over land, not being in a relationship with. So if we're going to come in and hold dominion over and ownership over, then love is not a part of the relationship, it's control. So if we're going to have any like moving forward, any process, any due diligence, any hope for Mother Earth and ourselves living on this earth, then we have to bring back people actually caring. And I feel like art is like the vehicle to have people care about things that they never cared about ever in life. We see it over and over again with the biggest pop stars. People caring about love and breakup and all of these things that maybe they're not even going through in that moment. Maybe they've never even gone through, but now they care. And I think the same happens in environment. The same happens for all of our native issues all across the board. Like we see this rise in the power of our storytelling. Like we're in this monumental moment in Native American history that people are actually listening and mass media is actually listening. And so this is like our moment to finally like, I feel that this is our moment to finally get those around us that never cared about us, our ideologies, our belief systems, and our values, to actually start caring about what matters to us. And I feel like our relationship to the earth is one of the most foundational values that we hold as Indigenous peoples. So for me, it feels like it's a hopeful moment in time where we can actually start seeing change because of our role in art and natives being shown in mass media now.
So I think I'm really glad that it got brought up because, how can we affect change to help climate change? And somehow it got brought up that our art can. And it reminded me recently a basket maker from the Mohawk Nation in the New York area. She recently made a black ash basket, but she wanted to represent the effect of the emerald ash borer, which is, like I explained earlier, is affected by climate change. So she made a basket approximately this tall, and towards the bottom, she used really, really nice material. If you know anything about black ash, underneath the bark, the layers and strips and splints that we get off are really white and shiny. They're really beautiful. So on the bottom, she used that. In the middle, she started to use more of the brown, the closer to the heart of the tree. It's still beautiful, but everybody likes the white, shiny, really fresh stuff. And a little bit further up, she used a couple pieces that were affected by the beetle, and that beetle leaves tracks in the ash. And then once she got towards the top, she used some of to put it bluntly, the crappiest pieces of black ash that she had, to show the effect of that. So I think if we all challenge ourselves to use our art to bring more awareness to climate change and what we can do to help it, and then we take that art and we either present it or we sell it to the people in charge.
I just want to just reiterate always remember our youth, and create this education and awareness, into our schools and to our circles with our youth, and create this education. I worked on a movie just came out called Hostile Territories, and I want to work on a screenplay, and so this is something I'm working on, as well as a book, as well as a theatrical stage performance. And I heard some people here were working at things like that. So, it's collaborate with each other as artists, to create, this whole vision that brings kids their interest into what we're trying to create. So through music, through art, videos, and so forth, we could really create this education awareness. And just like our brother over there who works with rocks and jewelry, our brothers and sisters here who work, with skins and hides and so many things, there's an opportunity to create this education and awareness, how to care for our tamich, the animals, tam hulak, Mother Earth, siwut, the water, and to our elders, and to honor them and honor our women, and to honor the legacy that our ancestors have left us. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara, Bobby, James, Joshua, and Dan, for sharing your thoughts today, and for bringing us to a point where we have some hope as we see the interconnectedness between climate change, changing lands and waters, artistic practice, and not just the way that it impacts us, but the way artists can have impact on how things go forward in the future. Thank you very much.
Woo!